Welcome to MDO Crochet for this tutorial on the Tunisian Picot border. It is a stitch that is done in multiples of 2. It is done a little bit different. You do have to do a foundation row of simple stitches, and then you'll do your close off with a slip stitch, but some of these slip stitches you chain 3 and then go right back into that initial slip stitch and chain it off and slip it off. It is a very easy stitch to do. And it'll all be dependent on your tension, your yarn size, and your needle size. For this tutorial, I used a 4-weight with a 6.5 millimeter crochet hook. So let's go ahead and get into it. So to do the Tunisian Picot border, it needs to be done in multiples of 2. You'll need to do it before you do your project close off. You can continue with the same yarn color as your project is, or you can change color. I am going to change color. And the change color, you need to have 2 loops left on your hook on the return pass before you would normally close off your project. So then you just hook up your yarn and use it as your yarn over and pull through 2. And then you tighten down your project's main color. Now for your border, you're just going to pull up regular simple stitches all the way down because you've got to create that base first. So we're going to go ahead and pull up simple stitches all the way down and do a standard return pass. So we have our simple stitch foundation row for our Picot border. Now the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go into the very first one and you're going to do a Tunisian simple stitch slip stitch, which is just pull up a simple stitch and then slip it off. Then we're going to go to the very next one, loop, yarn over, pull up our loop, slip it off, and then we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and then we're going to go right back into that slip stitch that we just did and slip it off. And then we're going to do a regular slip stitch. Then we're going to go into the very next one and do a slip stitch. And then chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then go right back into that slip stitch we just did. And do another slip stitch. And lock this Picot down. Slip stitch. Go to the next one. You do a slip stitch and a chain 3. 1, 2, and 3, and then go right back into that slip stitch we just did. Yarn over and slip it off. And then it's a slip stitch. Go to the very next one. Do a slip stitch and a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Go back into that same slip stitch. Yarn over and pull up another slip stitch. So what you're doing is you're building it up and slipping it off in that same slip stitch. So we do a slip stitch. Then we go to the next one, we do a slip stitch and a chain 3. Slip stitch, and then now we chain 3. So 1, 2, and 3. Then we go right back into that same vertical bar that we did our slip stitch in, and we're going to yarn over and do another slip stitch into it. We do a single slip stitch. Then we're going to go back in, go to the next one, do a slip stitch, and then a chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and then back in to where we did that slip stitch and do another slip stitch so we can lock this off, and it creates our border for us. Again, a slip stitch, and then we're going to go to the next one, do a slip stitch and a chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, go right back into that same slip stitch and slip it off. Do a slip stitch again. So Every other one's going to have 2 slip stitches in it. Now we're at our end. We're just going to do a slip stitch because now we got to change it up a little bit. Because now we're going to go to the side. And then the side, all we're going to do is just pull up simple stitches. Again, you're going to pull up all your loops because we got to do our simple stitch border. And then the way you're going to pull up the border is you're just going to go into the gaps at the end that create the same chevron. Then you can go through just the very first loop, or you can go through both loops down here on your chain, because this is our base chain. And you can just go through and then pull up a loop, yarn over chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2, do the standard return pass. Now we're at our standard end. Then we're going to slip stitch. Then we're going to go through, slip stitch, chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and then go right back into that same slip stitch and do it again. Just a standard slip stitch. Then we're going to go into the next loop, do a slip stitch, but this slip stitch is accompanied by a chain of 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then we go right back into that same slip stitch. And then a slip stitch. And then we're going to go into this bar, pull up our and slip stitch, and then change 3. 1, 2, 3. Go right back into that same bar we did the slip stitch in, and do another slip stitch so we can close that chain 3 off. Slip stitch. Then we're going to go into the next bar, do a slip stitch, and then a chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. And that is all there is to the Tunisian Picot border. And you can see how it looks. And that is all there is to it. It is very simple. And then once you get to the end, we'll do that one more time. So we'll do another slip stitch. And then go to the next one, do a slip stitch, chain 3, 1, 2, 2, and 3. Go back into where we did the initial slip stitch for that chain. Yarn over and do another slip stitch so we can walk it off. And then we're going to go to the next one, slip stitch, go to the very next one, do a slip stitch with a chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and then right back in to where we did the initial slip stitch for this, and do a slip stitch again. Go to the very next one and do a slip stitch, and then we go into the next one, do a slip stitch and a chain 3. So you can see the pattern. It's a slip stitch, then a slip stitch, chain 3, then a slip stitch back into the initial slip stitch, then repeat that pattern. And then we're going to go do our last slip stitch right here to close off this chain 3. Go to the very next one, do a slip stitch, and we're here at our end. So we're going to go ahead and do our slip stitch, and we're on a side, and it's time we are in the pattern, so we need to do a chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and then go back in to where we did that slip stitch and do another slip stitch to close that off. Now we're on our chain side. This is the side we did our base chain. And how we're going to handle this is you're just going to go right through where you see your loops, your initial chain loops. It's going to be a little bit of a snug fit. And you're just going to pull up your simple stitches all the way down so we can do our base row. And it is a standard return pass. And I'll see you here in just a moment. Okay, so I've got my standard return pass. Now we're going to go ahead and do our slip stitch. And then we're going to go into the next one, do a slip stitch and a chain 3, and then a slip stitch back into that same bar. And that is it for this pattern. That is the Tunisian Picot border stitch. Now, if you found this tutorial helpful, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. It'd be greatly appreciated. And as always, folks, keep stitching.